Welcome to another Chapter 10 video on linear regression. This is another one on the regression equation, and it is a practice problem as well, just like you had the one for the correlation coefficient. Again, you'll be wanting to pause the video throughout to make sure that you're doing the right steps as you go along. So to begin with, here's the problem. There are many interesting relationships among various nutrients in fruits and vegetables. Below are the number of grams of carbohydrates and kilocalories from a 100-gram sample of various raw foods. So first thing you need to do here, pause the video and enter that data set. Now you've got that data entered. It's again time to identify the different pieces of data that you will need for your formulas. So identify those from your calc. Those values you get should be, again, the sum of x. In this case, that's 85.15. Your sum of your x squares, 1226.9. Your sum of y's, 344. The sum of your y squares, 20,156. The sum of your x's times their y's, 4,966.97. And n is 6. Again here, that sum of xy, 4,966.97. There, 4,966.97. Those are the values that you're going to be using. I do want to make a note. You don't have to write those down ahead of time, but it will be very beneficial to write those down on your test and your homework before you start doing the problems. So, continuing on. First thing I want you to do is to just identify the basic form of your equation. So pause that. Write down the form of the equation. Okay, that form actually, I mean, is the y prime equals a plus b x. That's your basic form. The things you've got to identify that there are the a and the b. So first of all, identify the formula for b. Now, after identifying that, you should have n times the sum of the product x and y minus the sum of the x's times the sum of the y's. All of that over your n times the sum of the x's squared minus the sum of your x values quantity squared. So that's the formula that you need to use. Plug in those formulas or values into the formula. You should have then substituted in your values. 6 times 4,966.97 minus your 85.15 times 344. All of that over the 6 times 1,226.9 minus the 85.15 squared. That's your substitution step. And then equals 4.60. And again, that last step here, the 4.60 is just read off the calculator, remember, not entered in and gone through a great detail of work. So that's the setup for that. Now the check marks, remember, for calculating B. First part, notation. Second part, formula. Third part, substitution. And then the last part is the actual answer. So one part, two parts, three part, and four part. So the four steps that you have to have just to get the B value. Now, the next value that we have to have, remember, is A. And there were two formulas for A. So preferably write down the one I gave you, but if not, write down the other one. So write down your choice for A. Now the two formulas you could have, remember the y bar minus b times x bar, which that's the sum of the y's over n minus b times the sum of the x's over n. This version of it lets you keep all your formulas in terms of summations as opposed to going and actually looking up y bar and x bar. Either is acceptable. Now the other version is the sum of the y's times the sum of the x's squared minus the sum of the x's times the sum of the product xy. All of that over n times sum of x squared minus sum of x quantity squared. And whichever one works best for you, that's the one you should use. So after that step, you need to substitute and find the actual value. Now, after entering your formulas, remember there's the one that I use, my preferred one, and then there is the textbook one. Either of those are just fine to use. Just as you do so, recognize your values are going to look different in the substitution, but your answers will be the same. So if you're using your blue, sum of y over n minus b times sum of x over n, that's the 344 over 6 minus 4.6 times 85.1 over 6. If you're using the black formula there, you're getting your 344 times your 1226.9 minus your 8515 times 4966.7, and then that denominator, 6 times the 1226.9, and minus the 8515 squared. And just remember, you get those values off the calculator, input those, and then doesn't matter which one. You still go to the same place to look and find that your A value is negative 7.96. Negative 7.96. Negative 7.96. And again, let's look at the different pieces that are needed here to get your full credit. First of all, notation for A, then one of these formulas, one or the other, one of these two substitutions, and then, of course, the final answer. So that's to get your portions for A. Then the last part is to actually put it all together into one equation. To finish out the problem, remember we are looking for a y prime equals A plus bx. Not just A and B, you actually now have to write that equation, remember. A being that negative 7.96 minus my B, which was, plus my B, 4.60 x. It is an equation. That's the going through your little practice with the correlation, or with the regression equation itself.